Hello, in this video we're going to look at how to take advantage of Synchro's layout features for planning and look-ahead meetings. Now I say layouts features because we're also including in that a little bit of viewpoints and not just layouts. And we'll talk about that over the course of the video. Now, how do you use the layouts feature? You just go to Navigator Layouts. The layouts window pops up. If it was already open but hidden, it's okay, you can just click on it and then click on it again, or you can find it from the tab underneath. And you can either right click and save a layout or import layouts from other projects and export them. And expand or collapse is for when you have a lot and they're under a tree. Now, the way you save a layout is you use save a layout as and not create layout folder. This only creates a folder in which you can store saved layouts. So I'm going to save a layout to demonstrate what it does. I'm just going to keep this called new layout, or maybe call it default. And then maybe I'm working on something where I need to use a different set of columns. Maybe I don't need the duration. I just need the start and the finish, and then some cost parameters. So budgeted direct cost and budgeted total cost. And maybe I want here, I'm not sure we even have cost information. We don't actually. And maybe I want sort by start date, and also maybe go to the end of the project and hide a few elements. So I can do that like this, for example, and right click, filters, hide. And just for fun, I'm going to also save this as a layout so we understand how the feature works. So I can right click, save layout as, and call this test. Now we can go back to the original layout. We open the layout and it'll take us back to the same set of columns. So no cost, same sorting as well, same camera angle, same position of the focus time, and really everything. So it's like a snapshot of your entire interface that is saved. Now, just by demonstrating this, you're thinking about the basic ways of using that feature, which is pretty effective, is when you're working on a project, you're planning it, for example, and you're playing it with a team, but then someone comes in to provide comments on a video they've seen before and they want you to address those really quick. Then what I usually do when I'm playing is I'll save a layout called WILO, which means where I left off. I'll help that person integrate their comments and concerns into the schedule, change around some activities, and all of that. And then once I'm done addressing these issues, I can go back to where I left off and pick up and continue from there. So it's pretty effective in that sense. Now, the opposite of that is sometimes you want to add a comment that you're later going to address, and that's where I use viewpoints. For example, you're working on something and then you realize that there's something wrong with the steal sequence over here. So what you do is you simply right click, enable markup mode, you circle what you want, and maybe you put a small note over here saying review steal sequence with John. I'm just gonna type that. So, and then you can disable markup mode, and then you can continue doing your work with planning, and automatically this was saved as a viewpoint. So if I go back here, I can right click, activate, and select the 3 view, and it goes back to the same position, time, the same markups, the same camera view. So what I usually do is that when I create a viewpoint, immediately I rename it, and I name it something like brackets pending, and then describe the issue. So review steal sequence. And then when the person who's able to help me with that is joining the team, then we go back to the viewpoints and we review the issues, and once it's solved, we can just rename it to solved. And on a lot of the projects I've worked on, if you go to the Viewpoints feature, you'll actually see a huge list of issues pending solved, pending solved, pending solved, because I like to keep track of the issues as you're solving them for the future. Now, a lot of times when you go back to these, they may not make sense because the schedule has changed so much, in that the same camera and same position in time reflects something completely different than what was intended originally in the viewpoint, but that's okay. Now, if you want to ask what's the difference between a viewpoint and a layout, is that the layout applies to the entire interface and several views at the same time if you have them open, while viewpoints only applies to a specific view that you choose. And if you have multiple views open, you can just activate in the selected or in all 3D views. So you can use both. Now, how to use layouts for planning and look-ahead meetings is it depends. So for example, when I'm planning, I also always like to keep the 3D column over here, and so that you can see immediately what you're assigning. And then depends on the type of the project, you might keep the resource appearance profile if it is something that is used a lot. And you might want, if you're, depending on where you are over the course of your plan, if you're assigning costs or if you're just building sequence or if you're adding durations, you change accordingly and you save it as a layout. But also it can be used a lot when you're conducting meetings. For example, let's say you have a meeting once a week with the steel crew to review the sequence, then you want a layout by scope. So for example, you use filters for that. So you can go to 3D filters, for example, and we have for this project a filter called new steel, which is all of the new steel construction. And you can activate that filter. You can create the same filter for the schedule. Now, a quick way to do that is you can right click on new steel, select filter 3D objects, then quickly go to task filters and add a task filter. I'm going to call that also new steel. And it's going to be a resource filter over here. And for resources, I'm just going to click mark selected and automatically it'll filter all steel activities. And now I have that set up. I can just pick the columns I want here and then go to, for example, I might need a user field indicating the weight of steel installed or the number of elements, and then go to layout and save it as a new steel planning. Now, other than by scope, you might want to do it by function. For example, if you're using look-ahead planning, a lot of times you want to plan weeks 1 through 4 separately from weeks 4 through 6, separately from weeks 6 through 8. So you can do that very easily. You can go and create a look ahead filter. So look ahead week 1-4, and that will be a look ahead filter that follows the data date for 28 days, sorry. And let's say you want to add a filter for weeks 4 through 6. Then I can go here and say look ahead week 4 through 6 and have a filter over here by date range, and we're going to pick the data date plus 28 days to the data date plus 4 through 6. That would be 37, 45, let's say. So we can have that and that. Now you can have them also follow the focus time, but it's more common to have them follow the data date. And in addition to that, you can have a filter that we use a lot for planning called, for example, has issue. So I can just type in has issue and I can go to my user fields and create a column called has issue. And it's going to be a string and not calculated, or if you're advanced, you can have it calculated based on resource statuses that come in from the iPad application. from the field. So in that case, I'm just gonna load that column and I'm gonna save it with, so I'm gonna activate that filter, for example, and save that as a viewpoint, so as a layout. So if I go here and call this save layout as, and call this Lookahead planning, Lookahead 1 through 4. So that's Lookahead 1 through 4 with whether or not it has issue loaded as a column. Let's say these, yes, yes, or you can just populate it with an X. As long as there's something in there, it's going to be included. And you can point those out. And in addition to that, you can create a filter for only what has issues. So that would be a user field, and has issue is there. So it's only showing those. And that could be another layout called Lookahead 1.4 has issues. So you can start your meeting with addressing those activities, then switching back to that other layout for the same range without necessarily isolating the activities that have issues, and then do the same for weeks 6 to 8. Now, there's a very cool video online called using Synchro to support the last planner system, where we show something like that, but instead of has issues, you have the 5 criteria for soundness for an activity, and use that also with Lookahead planning. I recommend watching that. But generally speaking, this is how you can use layouts for planning and carrying out different types of meetings.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.